Greetings. I'm Reverend Kathy McCall, and I'm the minister at Unity North Spiritual Center in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Welcome to our special Good Friday lesson. Our website is unitynorthmn.org. There on the homepage you'll find a link to other lessons that I've done, as well as our upcoming Easter lesson and future lessons. So please send your friends, and this talk will also appear at Friends of Unity Facebook page, as well as YouTube. So also on the homepage, there's a donate button if you'd like to give us a donation at this time while we're closed. It's deeply appreciated, and you can just go to that button, and that takes you into PayPal or credit card payment. Or if you prefer to send something by mail, our address is Unity North Spiritual Center, 11499 Martin Ave Northwest, Coon Rapids, Minnesota 55433. And in addition to that, I would love to hear from you. So you can write to me there, or please email. I'd love to hear your responses, your comments. Just feel that connection, since I don't get to actually see you on Sunday or on Friday, as the case is today. So my email address is, I have two of them. The first through Unity is Kathy, and that's Kathy, .McCall, MCCALL, at unitynorthmn.org. My more personal email is kmccall12@gmail.com. So let me hear from you. And now let's begin. Good Friday, the way Unity celebrates it is a little different than your traditional Good Friday service. And so just be prepared. This lesson may be different than you've heard before. And also, Good Friday, in Good Friday, we think of it as a day of remembrance. We come together on this day of remembrance to think of the man Jesus, who on this day over 2,000 years ago met and finally overcame every obstacle that life on the earth plane can present to us. So my lesson today is called The 7 Last Words of Jesus. Jesus proved that by having faith in God, we rise above all earthly limitations to attain spiritual fulfillment. You know, we in Unity do not think of Good Friday as a day of sorrow, and we do not attempt to enter into the suffering of Jesus by emphasizing the horrors of the crucifixion, which was really one of the most cruel ways of putting people to death. Good Friday is, however, a solemn and profoundly sacred occasion. The symbology of the crucifixion for each of us is what we are concerned with. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, said, "Crucifixion is an experience in which we let go of some cherished aspect of our personality or of our personal life as we have known it, in order to unfold more of our spiritual potential. It often feels very painful to us, even if we recognize how necessary it is to go through it. Crucifixion refers to that inner conflict and upheaval that often occurs in consciousness when we resist letting go of old thoughts, old ways of thinking. There is not a person hearing this lesson today who has not experienced crucifixion, because it is the suffering that we undergo in our journey to wholeness. It occurs only on the relative plane of life, but not in the absolute realm. The absolute realm is the eternal, unchanging mind of God. But the relative is the world of the senses, where we experience pain and fear and death. The truth of our being is the absolute eternal reality, and this is what we experience in the resurrection. So our main purpose this evening, or today, whatever time you're listening to this, is not to enter into the suffering experience of Jesus on the cross, but rather to enter into a time of sacred contemplation and give new meaning to those at times painful and entombing experiences of our lives. Many of us resist looking at what we think of as the dark places within us. Often people simply want to avoid crucifixion and go right into the uplifting experience of the resurrection. I know I can relate to this. I'd rather skip right through crucifixion and get on with resurrection, as I'm sure you would as well. Yet to fully experience this spiritual journey, we must enter into the deepest regions of our consciousness. We must move within, from the mind to the heart, and from the light into the darkness. All of us must face our inner darkness with courage and fortitude if we are to become spiritually transformed. We must become accepting of the wholeness that we are, to come to know that we are not just beings of light, but beings of both lightness and darkness. We must recognize and integrate all aspects and facets of who we are into our consciousness. Matthew 16:24 reads, "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up the cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it.'" It is recorded in Scripture, while Jesus was on the cross, that he spoke 7 last words. Now, these words represent the final stages and steps we must take in our own spiritual journey towards resurrection. And they summarize the states of consciousness to be attained in our liberation. So let us be still and affirm, "Through the Christ in me, I now cross out all that prevents my highest good." Let's say this in 2 parts together. "Through the Christ in me, I now cross out," together. "Through the Christ in me, I now cross out all that prevents my highest good," together. "All that prevents my highest good." So the 7 last words are actually 7 sayings that Jesus spoke from the cross. And after each saying and word are explained, there will be a reading after from the Book of Qualities, which helps to personify each word in a very unique way and also brings a lighter touch as well. It conveys the idea that even while willing to enter into depths, light or lightness is always possible. So the first word, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And the word is forgiveness. You know, the first important step, most important step that we must take in the final overcoming is forgiveness. One of the most destructive emotions that holds us captive is the anger and resentment we hold against those we perceive as having harmed or hurt us. As long as we hold on to these hurts or to guilt because we've harmed another, we cannot enter into the full realization of the queendom of God. It is important for us to search carefully for any unforgiving thoughts. Through forgiveness of ourselves and others, we cleanse our minds so that we are clear channels for the expression of God's love. We may not be able to forgive in human consciousness, but we can rise to a higher state of mind and let the forgiving love of the Christ forgive through us. At this moment, let us forgive all toward whom we feel any resentment. Just trust that right now the Christ is forgiving through you. And know this truth as I speak it for you. The Christ in me now fully and freely forgives. The Christ in me now fully and freely forgives. And now the more light-hearted reading from the Book of Qualities. Forgiveness is a strong woman, tender and earthy and direct. Since her children have left home, she has embarked on an extended walking tour, visiting ruins and old monuments, bathing in rivers and hot springs, traveling through the small towns and large pulsing cities, tracing the current of sorrow under the stories she hears. Sometimes the city authorities and officials don't want her within their gates. If the people want her there enough, she always manages to find a way inside. Forgiveness brings gifts wherever she goes, simple ones. A 3-stranded twig with leaves turning yellow, a belt she wove on an inkle loom, a little song that grows inside you and changes everything. She brought me a silver ring from the south with a pale stone, pink with a hint of brown. When I had asthma, she taught me how to breathe. So the second word Jesus said, "Today you shall be with me in paradise." The second word is compassion. The 2 thieves who were crucified with Jesus represent the human belief in duality. One taunted Jesus to use his power to save them, while the other, more penitent, simply asked Jesus to remember him when he entered the kingdom. And Jesus said the second word, "Today you shall be with me in paradise." So Jesus in the center between the 2 thieves represents the compassionate love of God, which flows to all of us. No matter how many mistakes in life we make, God's unlimited love is always available to us, no matter what we've done or how far short of the spiritual ideal we've fallen. When we turn to the Christ within, we will be in paradise. Meister Eckhart, the great German mystic, said, "You may call God love, you may call God goodness, but the best name for God is compassion." Allow yourself to know this truth as I speak it for you. I am an expression of divine compassion. I am an expression of divine compassion. And so now, more lighthearted from the Book of Qualities. Compassion wears Saturn's rings on the fingers of her left hand. She is intimate with the life force. She understands the meaning of sacrifice. She is not afraid to die. There is nothing you cannot tell her. Compassion speaks with a slight accent. She was a vulnerable child, miserable in school, cold, shy, alert to the pain in the eyes of her sturdier classmates. The other kids teased her about being too sentimental, and for a long time she believed them. In ninth grade, she was befriended by Courage. Courage lent compassion bright sweaters, explained the slang, showed her how to play volleyball, taught her you can love people and not care what they think about you. In many ways, compassion is still the stranger, neither wonderful nor terrible, herself utterly always. So the third word is devotion. Jesus said, "Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother." Mary, the mother of Jesus, stood at the foot of the cross alongside John, the beloved disciple. The love of Jesus for others was so great that even upon the cross, he was able to express his devotion to those around him. In this case, he recognized his mother and lovingly placed her in the care of the beloved disciple John. Tradition tells us that Mary lived with John for the remainder of her life. When we choose the path of love and devotion, our duties and our burdens are made light, and our obligations are fulfilled. We have cast our burdens on the Christ within. So allow yourself to know this truth. Through a devoted love, I fulfill every obligation in a wise and loving manner. Through a devoted love, I fulfill every obligation in a wise and loving manner. And from the Book of Qualities, devotion lights candles at dusk. She braids her grandmother's hair with an antique comb. She works as an ecologist at the university. She wears long flowing tunics with bright cotton pants. She has never taken a dance class, but she moves with an unstudied grace, sensitive to the edge where her body meets the air. Devotion balances periods of great stillness with times of movement and exuberance. She has prayed in many temples and seen evidence of God in unlikely places. She keeps a postcard of St. Francis above her desk. A Yemenite amulet hangs in her window. Always, she remembers to honor the mother. The fourth word is doubt. Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus was to be on the cross for 3 more hours, from noon until shortly after 3 in the afternoon. During these hours, there was darkness over the land, and Jesus was silent until just before 3 o'clock. At that time, he uttered a cry of desolation and physical anguish. My God, why have you forsaken me?" What's interesting is these words are actually the opening words of the 22nd Psalm, written before the time of Jesus. So he was reciting a known passage as an affirmation, while it was also a cry of suffering. It's in addition a cry of deliverance. Sometimes we come to a point where we feel cut off from all outside help, even from God. And it is then that we can find God within. The God within. In the darkness of separation, the light of spirit often rises in the human heart. Crisis brings us face to face with our own inadequacy. And this in turn leads us to the inexhaustible sufficiency of God. Where there is no place else to go, we go to our knees. Allow yourself to know this truth. I now release all doubt, and I have faith with God in charge of my life. I now release all doubt, and I have faith with God in charge of my life. From the Book of Qualities. Doubt camped out in the living room last week. I told him that we had too many house guests. Doubt does not listen. He keeps saying the same thing again and again and again, until I completely forget what I'm trying to tell him. Doubt is demanding and not very generous, but I appreciate his honesty. He will tell me what is on his mind, and sometimes he can be influenced with positive persuasion. So down to the fifth saying of Jesus. The word he said was, or the saying he said was, I thirst. And the word for this is longing. A Roman soldier, hearing Jesus speak these words, responded by pressing a sponge soaked in vinegar to his lips, the one act of compassion to Jesus during his time on the cross. Now, this call of Jesus, I thirst, speaks to the needs of the physical being and also to the thirst of the soul. Our search for truth, for spiritual illumination, must be an actual thirsting from the very depths of our being. Our soul seeks the living waters of truth with a deep longing, as our divinity within cries out to be expressed. Allow yourself to know this truth. My longing to know God is fulfilled. I now drink of the living waters of spirit. My longing to know God is fulfilled. I now drink of the living waters of spirit. And now, from the Book of Qualities, longing studies archaeology. She is at home in the future as well as the past. She collects mirrors and antique necklaces. The lamps in her living room have embroidered shades, silk with beaded fringes. She takes walks in the early autumn evening when everything looks dark green and purple and brown and deep blue, and the windows of the little houses shine yellow from the lights within. Longing speaks the language of dreams. She is a dancer and an actress. She knows tides and currents and pirates. She has swum in all the oceans and traveled to places that the rest of us have only visited in our sleep. Although I have met longing many times, it is not easy to describe her appearance. She dresses herself with an awareness of where she's going and who will be there. It is more than the costumes, though. Even the gossip columnist who notices everything could not quite remember longing's height or the color of her sea-filled eyes. If you must see her, invite her to a concert. She is especially fond of the music of stringed instruments. So now the sixth word. It is service. And Jesus said, "It is finished." Now, these words are not the words of defeat or the cry of relief which comes from the end of suffering, but rather they are words of completion and wholeness. The Greek word finished means not simply over and done with, but brought to a complete fulfillment. Jesus earlier in the week said he had finished the service which God had sent him to do. Jesus fulfilled his life's destiny. And there is for each of us a perfect self-expression. There is a place which only we can fill. When God calls us to service, all expenses are paid, and necessary money, opportunity, training, strength, and courage. In this way, through service, we are brought to complete fulfillment. Allow yourself to know this truth. I am fulfilled through answering the call to the perfect service for me. I am fulfilled through answering the call to the perfect service for me. And now from the Book of Qualities. Service is devotion's practical sister. She's a funny one, sort of austere and sensuous at the same time. She isn't as stern as she was as a young child, and she is not in such a hurry, but her intensity has not diminished at all. She has learned that all seeds must be watered before they sprout. Some lie dormant for years. Shoots must be nurtured before they bloom. We all work in different ways. Sometimes we need to remind service to take a vacation. She sees so much that needs to be done, and she forgets she also needs to rest. In my opinion, service would be a marvelous job counselor. If you can imagine the Employment Development Department hiring someone like her, she never asks you to do what you cannot do, but only what you most truly can do. And finally, the seventh word is liberation. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Jesus' suffering was now almost over when we finally come to the place of knowing that every vestige of human effort is exhausted, that God is in control. Our release is very near. This release came to Jesus, and it comes to us when the seventh or last word is spoken. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. The seventh word is liberation. As we let go and let God, we are liberated. When we completely surrender to the will of God, we find the answers to all of our questions and concerns. When Jesus spoke his last word, the veil of the temple was rent in two from top to bottom, and an earthquake shook the earth and split the rocks. Thus is the ultimate power of surrender and our ultimate liberation. Allow yourself to know this truth as I speak it for you. Through the power of the living Christ, I surrender my body, my soul, and my spirit to the will of God. I let go, and I am liberated. And finally, from the Book of Qualities, Liberation tried to commit suicide when he was 17. Things got even worse before they got better. He was married to terror for nearly 10 years. One day when he was wandering famished and half crazy in the mountains, he bumped into ecstasy. Ecstasy wept to be reunited with his old friend, and taught liberation a simple prayer. After that, liberation was free to leave terror. Consider your own wounding. Considering the wounding going on in our planet right now. Consider all that which you would release and put to death for your new birth. What do you need to sacrifice? What habits, thoughts, fears, false beliefs? The wounding or breaching of our soul is an invitation to our renaissance. Our woundings tell us that old forms are ready to die and new forms are ready to flower. Even in the darkest night, there is grace. It is the force that moves us out of the dark tunnel, out of the tomb, out of the birth canal into a brand new life. The poet Rumi said, "Don't turn your head. Keep looking at the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. And don't believe for a moment that you're healing yourself." Well, after crucifixion, we allow our wounding to become a sacred experience of resurrection, a powerful transformation in our life. And that brings us to Easter. So I invite you to please join us on Sunday for our Easter lesson as we focus in on the power of resurrection, which we all long for at this time. So have a sacred Good Friday, and I'll see you on Easter. God bless you.